Marcus Martinez did the impossible. He got divorced and then remarried his wife, and they even had another kid together. So he's going to share his secrets from going from, what might have been the lowest low. I'll let him confirm or deny that, but winning on the comeback trail. So this is going to be a lot of fun here with Marcus. He's also an amateur stand-up comedian, so I expect you to be funny.
That's like the kind of pressure that you can't just put on someone. But you
go on stage. That's the kind of pressure you're going to get.
I did perform at the Hollywood Improv in a kind of a setting that was a little bit more like with some students, but it was effing awesome. It was a full freaking group, and it was just like, oh, I felt just so much. It was like, I gotta keep doing this.
But didn't you do some stand-up for My Perfect Life Retreat?
Oh yes, that was where I started. That was where it all started. So as this continues, I'm gonna come back to that and be like, here's what I actually have the video that I have yet to look at. So one of these days.
Interesting. Well, you have more important things going on in your life here. So why don't we start here, Marcus? Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? And where are you living now?
Right now I'm in Southern California. I am in the education world for fitness, specifically with kettlebells. That was kind of my niche that I got into a few years ago, and it's been going well ever since. So worked with some different companies, worked with On It, did some stuff on my own, did some stuff with Kettlebell Kings, and now currently on my own again, which has been very, very fun and exciting. And a lot of the stuff that I learned from you, I continue to incorporate. So hats off to you, Mr. Ballantyne.
Thank you, my man. What else are you going to add?
I was just going to add, and honestly, 99.999% of my time is here with my family. I mean, we homeschool our kids now. We, like you said, we got remarried. We had another kid. I mean, there's so much to unpack here, and so much stuff that I think is incredibly valuable, specifically for guys who, have gone to the other side and didn't know how to get back from it, and really it just changed their life because they either lost their family or weren't able to have the connection, the relationship with their kids, or maybe got remarried, but brought the same baggage to the next marriage. So a lot of things that I hadn't learned, or I had to learn the hard way, and that my ex-wife, now wife, former wife have all kind of, talked about and helped actually a lot of people and friends of ours who have gone through similar situations.
Yeah. And the reason that, you and I, been friends for a long time. You were the MC of the last Perfect Life retreat I did in 2019, where I shared my plan for finding my wife, which I did. So it's been a while since we've chatted. And the reason why I reached out to you is because I have two friends, former clients who knew what to do, didn't do it, and find themselves on that other side. Now, when you and I were chatting, we talked about how you are known among your friends as the only man to have died and gone to the other side and come back. What does that mean when you say that?
Well, I mean, so my wife and I, we were married for about 7 years. We had 3 kids. We ended up getting divorced, mostly from poor decisions that I made on my end that, led us to the place of like, okay, this no longer works. And, for me, stepping out of our relationship and making it to where I put my needs first. I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about my kids. And I can't tell you how many people and how many guys specifically I've talked to where they have that mentality where it's like, they can justify. I mean, you can justify anything. And that's where I was. It's like, oh, I don't feel the love. Oh, I don't feel this. Oh, this isn't, we're not meant to be. So that got us to the place of, okay, this doesn't work anymore. And when I realized, oh shit, I made a mistake, I got to figure this out, she was like, nope, we're done. And that first door slamming and knowing that door would not open again was one of the most painful things in my entire life.
How old were you when you both got married?
So we met when I was 18, she was 19. We got married at 24, first kid by 25, and then 34 was divorce. So we just found out yesterday that I've known her more than half my life. I've known her. So there's definitely some longevity there.
So you were married for about 10 years before you got divorced?
2007 was when we got married. Okay. 2015. So.
Okay.
All right, a little bit.
So go back to what you said before. You didn't care about the kids. Now, obviously you cared about your kids, but what were the actions and activities that got you into trouble that showed her or suggested to her that you didn't care about your kids? Because that's the same situation that my friends find themselves in, working, justifying that all the work that they do, is for the family, and it is to a point, of course, but then, their wives don't see them as caring about the kids. What does that look like what did that look like in your wife's eyes when she got really upset with you? And what does that tend to look like in women's eyes?
Well, first off, it's such a slow burn. It's the whole frog in hot water versus frog in warm water. Whether that actually happens or not is irrelevant. But it's such a long process. Nothing like this ever happens overnight. It's not like all of a sudden you just wake up, everything is great, and then you're like, F it, I'm out. There's this long process to break apart your feelings from things and be able to justify other things. So, and the whole absence makes the heart grow fonder is the biggest BS. Being together makes the heart grow fonder. So me being in the gym, me being gone all the time, I had owned and operated a gym for a number of years. So being there, and then of course, naturally, the attention you get, and you're like a rock star every time you walk into your gym. And just out of human nature, it's just hard to ignore that. And as it keeps going, and the same thing, just that kind of slow burn where it's like, oh, it feels like, people actually really care about you. Oh, people listen to you. And it's easy again to just break apart from the monotony of daily life with your family when that's what you view it as.
Got it. And so, 3 kids at, a relatively young age, in your early 30s, what difficulties did that bring to your relationship and your communication with your wife that now you have 4 kids does not bring the same problem? Like, obviously it's a matter of perspective and priorities, but what were the frustrations that you had the first go round?
Well, the one that I think was the most common for me and that I've heard multiple times was she doesn't really care about me, or she doesn't love me. You would hear this, and I would felt this at the time, where it was like, she's not giving me attention. And like a selfish brat, it was like, I'm feeling like, oh, I'm not getting attention when our kids are the ones getting the attention. It's that was the first thing where I really fell into this trap of she doesn't care. And the more I felt that, the more I pulled away, or the more I would just give her the cold shoulder. I didn't really feel like dealing with things. And so that lack of communication just like started as this little splinter and turned into this giant oak between us. So it was really easy to just then again justify and pull away and just be like, all right, well, I'm just going to spend my time here, or I'm just going to be gone, or whatever.
So, one of my friends, it seems like there was, the wife says it was like 9 years of betrayal, and through this, being married to the business and not married to her. And then they get to the point, it's like it chips away. It's like molehill becomes a mountain. And then it seems like it shifts into hurting one another. Is that what happened in your relationship? Do you see that in other people's relationships? And how can people prevent getting to that point where then things become like really traumatic?
The biggest thing that I would recommend to people is you have to point the spotlight within. You have to look at the things that you are not dealing with, the traumas that you haven't unsurfaced. If you don't deal with your own BS, you're going to take that to every single relationship. This is why we have 5, 6, 7 marriages, because people don't really make that actual change. It's too painful. When we finally got divorced, and I was like, okay, something's got to change. I'm on this path. I'm going to stay on this path. I don't like this. When I started going to therapy, and that was when I was introduced to the book, The Tao Te Ching, and being able to really look internally at like, what am I doing that needs to be fixed? And until that happens, like I said, you're just going to carry that with you to everybody. So it's these little issues that you don't know how to deal with from a communication standpoint, or you take everything, like for me personally, I took everything personally. And I would say that was the biggest mistake I made in our first relationship, was anything she said, even if it wasn't meant to be hurtful or anything, I would just be such a whatever about it. And I would just take it personally. And then that would create this little like issue within me. And then while we were divorced, it was like the first lesson I really learned from my very good friend and mentor. He was like, accept and allow, and just let everything go. Nothing is personal. And when you really truly embody that nothing is personal, nothing can bother you. It was so crazy. We would argue about things after being divorced. And then even now, we're not perfect, we'll still argue. And things that I can remember would just trigger the crap out of me. it just doesn't even faze me. So that was a huge thing that I tell people whenever anyone is telling me what's going on. I'm always like, look, you can't take anything personally, even if it's meant to be personal. Can't take it personally. It's about them.
And so so if somebody does, so if I say to somebody, well, I don't want to sound like a jerk. So if somebody says to somebody like, you're lazy, you're disappointment to me, how does somebody not take that personally? Like what are the techniques? What is the mindset that somebody is able to, kind of like absorb that punch, it's a verbal punch, and then, right themselves and continue to act in a way that is the right way to act?
When you realize that nothing's personal, that means that everything someone does is about them. It's about their perception of you. It's about their perception of themselves that is being manifested in you and what you're doing. So it's bothering them. So there were times where people would say something to me and it was just like, it would definitely evoke some emotion, some feeling. But when you realize you don't have to absorb it, you can literally just let that thing slide by. And when you realize how easy it is to do, it's not easy in the sense that it's because something you've never done or haven't done for a long time. But when you learn that it's such a simple, formula of just like, you literally just let it go. And it's so simple. It's like, it almost gets overlooked. People will be like, well, no, it's not that simple. Yes, it is. Like, we'll just go for a walk. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Like, you really have to simplify things. And that was something that reading the Tao, and I read the Tao every single day. I mean, I have my copy somewhere. It's like taped up, and just kind of getting these little gems every single day was so powerful, where it's like, be like water, flow, accept and allow, don't judge anyone. The more I was like pulling away from the old Marcus, it created this new Marcus that was like, oh, wow, this is how I want to live. And also, of course, the whole like, your mind is so powerful. You can make a hell out of heaven and a heaven out of hell. I look at my life with my kids pre-divorce and things that I remember feeling like, oh my God, this is such a pain in the ass. Oh, I don't want to do this. It was like all of a sudden I lived for that. Waking up early, watching countless Disney movies every single day over and over, whatever it was like all of a sudden those things became so easy. So it was just this mind shift that changed everything and how I viewed everything.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that book, and for some people, for a lot of people, there's a book that comes into their life at a certain time, and for me, I've tried really hard to get into the Tao, and a few people have sent me copies. I know you sent me a copy. I still have that copy, and a couple other friends. For me, it was The Art of Living by this woman named Sharon LaBelle, and it was a translation of Epictetus's teachings. And it was the right book at the right time that I read repeatedly, that I bought for so many, that changed my life. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Tao in a second, because I think it's very important to unpack how important that was to you. But first, what's the thing that, so any man who's listening, watching to this is, still in the molehill phase, is already in the, the molehills have become mountains. There's resentment. Maybe the wife has left, like my two friends. What are the most important things for them to do right now when you are in a situation of conflict, very bad conflict with your spouse?
The first thing is, if you have kids, that's where all your attention needs to go. You need to be the best version of yourself for them. That's number one, because how you are, regardless of if you stay together or not, this is going to determine their future relationships. So when I really embodied that and thought man, my kids are seeing me and my wife going through this, I can't keep up like this. I want them to have a better future than I have right now. So I really turned to a place of service. How can I serve? How can I help? How can I give? How can I stop being a taker? And when I say service, it doesn't mean especially if your wife has left or your wife has gone, don't bombard, don't try to fix anything. It's like this, you're already in muddy water, and the more you keep trying, it's just going to stay muddy. You have to let things just relax, but focus on how you can serve and how you just take every single day. And this is where, for me, it was definitely a day-to-day thing. There were days that just were brutal. There were days that were awesome. There were days where I took my kids in and I'd leave, and it was like, man, I'm on the verge of tears because I have to leave my house. So you really have to just take it day to day and focus on the emotions that you can, and just decide, how do I want to feel? So if you are feeling something, you're feeling just absolute anger, just rage inside, how can you turn that to service? How can you turn that to something good about your kids. I really not only went into, journaling, a lot of journaling, but I loved that kind of breakdown of like the 5-minute journal where it's like the morning, what are you grateful for? And at night, what went well? And I did that every single freaking day in, day out. Every morning I'd wake up and really feel gratitude. It's become such a buzzword. It's like, yeah, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my kids, but you truly have to feel that. And even at your darkest and your worst, you can absolutely feel those nuggets of gratitude and shift your mindset to something more positive.
Yeah, that's the idea of the stacking of the wins. And even if you're stacking wins that are paper thin, you're right now, because of the situation that you're in, hey, listen, if you stack paper thin wins over and over and over again, eventually you have a mountain. Now, I know that for me personally, when I screw up in my relationship, there's this inner child in me, perhaps, where I'm tempted to defend myself. I want to say, well, it wasn't that bad, or, but I did this, or, for whatever, whatever I want to say, or I want to offer an excuse, or I want to just apologize over and over again, thinking that that's going to fix it. But why doesn't that actually do anything? And what should I do? What should we all do?
When you do that, when you justify, you're just, again, taking the blame off of yourself. And you're really, what is your part in this? There's always a part in this. And this is where I will say for my wife, where it was truly remarkable, even at our lowest, she took responsibility where she was responsible. So her taking some responsibility, me obviously taking responsibility, it allowed the next step. It's like all, progress begins with honesty. It was like you had to really be honest with yourself. And when I was really, truly honest with myself and not just trying to justify things, that allowed me to be like, okay, how can I go to this next place? If I'm justifying, then now I'm in this like swirl of negative emotion that I can continue to justify. And like I can have, my internal dialogue be like, yeah, F her, she did this. It's like, yeah, you're right. We did do this right. Oh, and then it just gets, again, this negative place that doesn't build, it just breaks down.
So how did you regain the trust? You were honest, and, fortunately she was honest and shared in some responsibility. Responsibility was maybe more on you, but how did you regain the trust, and what was the timeline for that?
So I showed up because, for me, it was like, yeah, I would say we're going to do this, or I would say I'm going to do something with the kids or whatever. And I would like sometimes do it. Sometimes I'd be too busy, whatever. So the fact that I showed up when there was nothing to gain from her, it was just me showing up, that definitely built the trust. And just, again, being of a place of service to my kids and to her was just this whole change. And kind of like anything, it's like, nobody wants to hear what you're going to do. Nobody wants to hear how you're going to change. You have to show it. And if you continue to show it enough times and people will start to believe that's who you really are, you'll believe that about yourself. I didn't believe that about myself at first. It was like, I knew, all right, I'm going to be here. I'm going to serve my family as best I can from afar, with my kids, obviously up close, but with her from afar. And just the more I did it, the more our relationship just kind of got better. So we got divorced in 2015. And by like 2017, we were like in a good place co-parenting. We were co-parenting from day one. And again, hats off to her for not ever using the kids as a weapon, not ever withholding the kids from me, not ever being like, F you, I'm going to come after you. It was always, you know what, we're together with these kids. Let's try to make that as good as possible. So for a couple of years, it was really, really hard. Got a little bit easier by like 2017, 2018. We were talking a little bit more. 2019, like mid 2019, it was all of a sudden like, I could probably do this again. And that kind of came out of nowhere because neither of us had this mentality of like, yes, we're going to figure this out. Like that was the furthest thing from our thoughts. So it was a good 4.5, almost 5 years of being divorced and like truly divorced. She didn't know my personal life. I didn't know her personal life. We would get together for the kids every now and then. We would take them to Disneyland or something like that to try to have some kind of normalcy together. Mm-hmm. Very rarely. But we really were just on completely different paths. And she was ready for me to, date and get married again. Figured that was going to be on her path as well. But both of us were so focused on the kids. It was like nothing ever happened.
And what did you do for yourself? So you said there was therapy and the reading of the book. And what else did you do that you could recommend to other men and women in the same situation?
I honestly, a lot of journaling. I've been journaling since I was like 18, and I think filled up more journals in those 4 or 5 years than I did in the previous 15. So a lot of that I did. I mean, a lot of prayer. And this is where so many people, they turn to something spiritual. They turn to God. They turn to something that is going to help them get through it. And definitely I started praying again. I started trying to build a relationship with God that I had not had. I mean, I grew up Catholic and went to Catholic school, and, it's like you're going through the motions for so many years that it's just, you kind of lose that. So that was very powerful. I reconnected with, not reconnected because I was already close with my family, but really got closer with certain family and was very, very particular with who I spent my time with. It was that circle that I had that I was so proud of, it being so big and being able to, have so many friends. It just got so small because by my own doing, I wanted to make sure that I was only around people who were better versions of me. And not that I was like, oh man, I need someone to bring me back up. It was just, no, who am I truly spending my time with? Are the people that I'm spending my time with, are they a level of toxic I didn't realize? I knew I was the toxic person for a lot of people. So I definitely upped my connections and who I was with and my friends and my family. And just like I said, how I do one thing is how I do everything. Just as you and Bedros has talked about a million times. And that service that I was, so focused on my kids, that extended out to the people I was working with, to the people I was friends with, to my family. It was always about, how can I be a giver? How can I be a plus one, not a subtraction, not take away from things?
I remember the trip you had to Austin, Texas, where, it's kind of, I think it was like early on in our coaching relationship. And I think it was a pivotal trip for you because it was a classic. Like, it wasn't anything crazy, but it was a classic. Marcus goes from California to Texas. He does his kettlebell show and he's the rock star. And then, you went out, maybe had a few drinks or something after, and then you were just exhausted for the few days after. And I saw that, I gave you advice on like becoming an operator and, having plans in place to like avoid that. And so that you come back, almost refreshed from the trip instead of fatigued by the trip. What impact did, those little hinges that swing big doors in your life when you started making changes around personal discipline and structure and the environment and the people?
I mean, it was everything. Your environment is everything, and who you are around becomes, or you become that. So it was very, very important to those little changes, like we talked about, and being that operator. That was such a huge mind shift for me, to be, super dad, to focus on my business, to focus on, creating the most value in every situation with every person, and then come back and feel not like I was in the past, where I'd come out of the gym and I was exhausted and I was drained and everything had just been like pulled from me and I had no energy for my kids. So it really made such a difference on me having the right amount of energy, and just, again, changing that mindset to less about like, I got to go do this. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this to make a better life for myself and my kids. So it was all those little things that just really pointed me to that, that perspective that really helped everything.
So speaking of your kids, you said that sometimes you and your wife would take them to Disney World or Disneyland together for the normalcy. What else did you do to, first of all, get them through the shock at first? So for all of our friends that are listening that are in that moment where there has been separation, how did you keep them okay? And then how did you keep, continue to foster their health throughout the years? And then, what was the response when they found out you were getting back together?
So I made sure that every single week I had one-on-one time with each kid. And I mean, dedicated, not on my phone, not doing something I wanted to do, something just that they wanted to do. So lots of connection, lots of time together. I mean, there were times in the gym where I didn't see them for 2-3 days almost, because it was like I was gone early, gone late, and they'd be asleep. So I really focused on time with them. For the stuff that we did together, if we took them out to dinner together or if we went to Disneyland together, it wasn't like we were like trying to pretend we were married. We just tried to show, hey, like we can have a normal relationship, co-parent as best we can, so that our kids see their parents getting along. So down the road, if, when or if either of us get remarried, like we can still have a very, modern family. And then the biggest thing was being so mindful of my emotions in front of them. So Didn't matter how angry I was with my ex-wife, never showing that, never telling them, never talking any kind of smack about her, which is like, you think pretty obvious, but I know a lot of people who don't follow that rule, and they kind of bring their kids in on this journey. So we really were mindful of not bringing our kids on that part of the journey. So that way they can just have that like normal childhood growth, seeing their family, seeing their parents, getting along, and not being kind of pawns in this divorce, which is like one of the most, this is the saddest thing I can see, is when people use their kids as pawns. So really just, and not even mindful or not even consciously doing this, but like if I'm feeling emotional and I was feeling like, wow, I'm like, I can't hold it together right now, I would leave. I would say like, hey, I'd drop them off at my parents. I would do something. I'd be like, I need a minute and go do this on my own. Didn't matter if I would go cry in the car. It was just, I needed to have some separation from them for that few minutes, just so I wasn't showing them so much emotion that they're like, what's going on? Then they feel invested in it. And then they feel like, well, what did I do? What can I do? It's like, no, that's too much pressure. And even if your kid's a little bit older, they don't need to go on the journey with you.
Got it. So, in 2017, I guess it was 2018, you guys were like, hey, try this again. What was the response of the kids? And then how old were they at that point?
Oh, so if it was 2019, my son was at that point 10. And okay. So 10, 11, 8, 9, 7, and then there was no baby yet. But we didn't take him on a journey. So even when we were like, okay, let's kind of figure this out, because this was mid 2019, they saw us together more, obviously, but we weren't affectionate. We weren't like trying to show like, hey, everything is great. We were just kind of more of what we've already done. So they didn't come along, because we didn't want to start this process and be like, yeah, let's do it, and then realize we can't do this. And then they're just on this roller coaster. So it wasn't really until we found out about Will, our youngest, that we're like, all right, let's go all in with them, and and told them we were getting married and doing everything. And that was when it was like, oh my gosh, are you? And we have video of them like crying, so excited, so happy. And it was just like every like dream you could have about reconnecting with your wife, having kids. It was like they were just so ecstatic. They were so happy. They were so excited. It was the best feeling ever.
What did you do for the second marriage? Did you have a ceremony?
Did in the backyard, and we had the pastor from our kids' school come out, and we just had her mom and the kids were the groomsmen, the bridesmaid. My son wanted to do a bachelor party, so I took him to Vegas. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. And then they found out there was another little.
Oh, and that's been when I say like I couldn't imagine being as happy as I am. Like I literally could not imagine it. Like at that time, even if you had told me, and I had a friend that was telling me like, this is going to get better, I promise you. It didn't matter. I was like, there's no way to feel what I feel now with our family. I mean, like I said, we went all in. We become that family. We've homeschool, got a Sprinter van. We drive all over the place. We spend all our time together. I mean, it is truly unlike anything I could have imagined. And so with our son, with our youngest now, all the kids are so helpful. They're so close with him. We were a little bit worried about that age gap. Like, oh, are they going to feel? It's like nothing. I mean, it's the most incredible thing.
Having a baby with that much time in between, how was it on you? Like your fatigue levels, and did you remember it being like that?
Yes, that's what got us divorced. So I do remember that. No, I mean, it just goes back to, where is my perspective? Where is my mindset at? I look at this time now and really, and then absolutely embody this is such a short time. You have a kid that's screaming, crying, you're changing crap diapers all day long. Like, it's a blip. My oldest is going to be 14 in a month. Like, that's bananas to me that I have a kid that's like bigger than me already. And that just feels like it just happened. So I look at Will now, who's going to be 2, and I'm like, every day, as
so he's not yet 2.
Cliche, he's going to be 2 soon.
Okay, so, got it. Okay,
it's as cheesy and cliche as it is. Like, every day is a gift with him. Every day is a gift, regardless. And we can't make up the time. So now it's like every day, everything I do with them is intentional. It's how can I be, again, the best version of myself. How can I master my emotions? How can I control my emotions? So that way I am the best version of myself to them every single day.
Right, because it will all be over soon. And that's, a lot of the stuff that I tell myself when the baby's screaming or something like that. Like, even like everything ends for better or for worse. And that's just the phrase that gets me through things. Now, you mentioned, so now you're the happiest you've ever been. And you said you had a friend who just told you during the darkest times, the toughest times, like things are going to get better. What else, besides journaling, Tao Te Ching, your friend, what else helped you through the worst times? Because I have a couple of friends, those two guys are going through the worst time right now.
That was it. I remember being at my absolute darkest, getting the book, the Tao Te Ching, reading through the whole thing, all 81 verses. It would take me about an hour, hour and a half. And I would sit there when I was at my absolute darkest, and I would sit there and just read it and just go through each verse. And from that, I would, I wouldn't journal it. It wasn't like how I would do in other books where I'm like trying to get nuggets out of it. It was just almost like a reading meditation. I would go through it, and I would help let it absorb within me. So the right phrase would come up at the right time. And I would see, like, as nature happens, all things happen on their own time. It's like all these things would pop up at just the perfect time. And then, and that was huge. I mean, that was literally everything. And then I would immerse myself in nature. I was down at the beach as often as I could be. I would put myself in environments and situations that would build me up and make me feel as good as possible. But ultimately, I knew it came down to how I felt, and I can make myself feel however I want to feel. Even at my darkest, I can truly be in control of my emotions. And those were the conversations I would have with my friend, who was ironically also the person that introduced me to the Tao Te Ching. And it was just being able to be the master of your emotions. You become the master of your emotions, the captain of your ship. You can truly create the life you want anywhere, regardless of what's going on. And like you said, everything ends. So knowing that everything ends, and I would sit there and I would remember time heals all, everything changes and everything ends. So the only thing that matters is today. And that's when I said, immerse myself in every single day, just taking it day by day. And normally when you hear take it day by day, it's like, you got to just trudge through this day. It's like, no. How can you create the most perfect day? So that's why every time we would talk, or when I was coaching with you and it was like, how was your week? It was like, yo, this was a 25 out of 10 every day.
You're one of the guys that made me create this hat. And so people that do see this hat and wonder what the heck does it mean? It's not because I'm mathematically challenged or anything. It's because for people in my coaching program, like Marcus was, we have 10 accountability questions. And the first one is simply on a scale of 1 to 10, how was your week? And there are 3 types of people. There are literal people like me, right? So I had a client today who just had an absolutely amazing week. He got more money into his real estate fund. He went to the F1 race at the last minute. His kids had a great weekend. His wife had a great weekend. And he gave it a 9 out of 10. I'm like, when are you ever going to give me an 11 out of 10? He goes, I'm just too literal. And right. But that's also me. And then there are people who, when they get a refund in their business and they're a 1 out of 10, like you can't have that emotional irregulation and be an entrepreneur. It's just not going to work. But then there are people like Marcus who, if I got like a 12 out of 10 from Marcus, I'm like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Because I would get I'm pretty sure that you and a guy named Joe Arco and Ron Morrow were the first people that started doing more than 10 out of 10. And so now I realized, for me personally, I need to up my baseline to an 11 out of 10. So that I'm always, it's grateful persistence is, to put 2 words to it. So 11 out of 10 means you have you have gratitude for the ability to persist through the problems that you have. It's grateful that you're on the other side of the ground, that you get to breathe, that you get to wake up with problems, because the people who don't wake up with problems, they ain't waking up at all. And so that's, that's a kudo to you, Marcus, for inspiring movement, because a lot of people really, during some tough times, really lean on this 11 out of 10. They wear the shirt, they got the hats, they have the coffee mugs, and it's really important to people. Now, what got you to reach out to me back in the day for coaching? Was that around 2018?
That was 2018. It was towards the end of my tenure with On It. So yeah, it was. And then because I saw the picture that you had sent me, and then I was looking through my old notes, and it was September or something of 2018 that I had met with you. So yeah, end of 2018.
Yeah. And then, the next year you were the MC at the Perfect Life Retreat, and away we go. So last thing, just tell me a little bit more about, one or two of your favorite things from the Tao Te Ching. And, maybe there was a specific verse and a specific moment where, you just lit up, or that continue to help you. Because I will say, just to share with you, like from that Art of Living by Sharon LaBelle, it was the control what you can, cope with what you can't control, and concentrate on what counts. So it's like the only thing you can control are your thoughts, words, and your deeds, your inner self. You can't control the external world. You can't control traffic. You can't control whether it's raining. You can't control if somebody else is going to personally insult you. You can't control any of that. But all you can control is your reaction in life. And I think everybody kind of knows that, but just when I was reading it in that book, it was the right time. It got me through a lot. And it was just, anytime something bad happened, I just look, okay, well, what can I control? I can control my tone of voice and my reaction is, as much as humanly possible. Obviously, there's sometimes your reaction is going to be very quick, but you can regain control. So any similar moments for you from that book?
The two that stand out the most, the first is when you conquer others, you're strong. When you conquer yourself, you're all powerful. And that to me was so incredibly just wow. Like if everyone's so focused on what they can do with their business and how they can, beat the competition. It's like, conquer yourself and you will have everything you've ever wanted. And that was to me so powerful. And then going in line with what you're just saying, nature doesn't hurry and everything happens right on time. That was like the most just relieving statement to know, like, hey, this is all happening for a reason. And you can't rush anything. You can't rush the process. Just let it unfold. And so this whole accept and allow, let it flow, it was so antithetical to, just go crush it, go build it, go do it. And to be able to have that, yin and yang of it, and that dichotomy, it was just really like, it allowed me to just take a breath, relax, and just let things happen. And everything that's happened in my life since has just been freaking gotten better and better and better. So it's a testament to that.
Yeah, it's a stacking of wins, from the lowest low, from the darkest of days. All you can do is go and stack the wins, and the wins will come at the natural pace, and, life will turn around. So Marcus, any last words that you want to share with people that are going through any type of rough time, whether it is their wife walking out with the kids, or whether it is the business having trouble, or whether they just woke up with a hangover? Anything you want to say to people that are fighting the good fight?
Every day, just put the effort in, let things happen, trust the process, enjoy the process as much as you can. I promise things will get better. If you're at your lowest, you're at your highest. It's this whole circle of life. And when you're at your highest, just freaking enjoy every moment of it.
That's exactly it. And so when I say everything ends, like everything will end and it will all be over soon. It will all be over soon is understanding that was one of my rules for living, because it is exactly what you just said. When you're going through hell, you got to keep going. It will all be over soon. And on the flip side, when things are amazing, it will all be over way too soon. And you must be present. And unfortunately, that is the problem that brings most of these marriages to the position that they get into. It's those molehills that become mountains. And when you get those mountains in between you, that's when you start to do things that are actually really hurtful, that are hard to come back from. So everybody, as Marcus says, go out there and live a good life, stack those wins, as I say, and everything will start to come together for you, and things will get better, even if things are pretty darn good now. Marcus, my man, thank you for taking the time today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you, man.
Yeah, this is very important. Please share this with anybody who's going through a tough time in life. Let them listen to a man who has been to the other side and been able to yes, and been able to bring it all back together again. So last thing I'll say is grab a copy of Tao Te Ching, and that's TAOTE Ching, and a copy of Sharon LaBelle's The Art of Living. We highly recommend those books. And I'll see you back here very soon on the Early to Rise radio show.